Intimate life in a changing Arab world, nominated for the Guardian First Book Award. Shireen started a career in medical science with a doctorate in immunology from the University of Cambridge before going on to become an award-winning healthcare correspondent with The Economist and a presenter with Al Jazeera English. The board of number of civil society groups working in the Arab region, including Median, National Affairs, Independent, and has written a lot about women, sexuality, and HIV. So Shireen, I would like you to speak, and we'll try to translate it as best as we can.
I'm sure you'll do a much better job in translation than I will do in the original. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here. This is such an enormous honor for me to participate in this press conference. As you mentioned, Pilar, my work, I specialize in looking at sexual rights, in particular in the Arab region. They are fundamental human rights. This is the right of every individual, every man and every woman to have a safe and satisfying and pleasurable, some sort of secondary rights that you get around to after you sort of political, economic, social, and cultural rights. They are interdependent, they are universal, they are interrelated, and they are indivisible. Now, I come from a part of the world where after decades of really egregious human rights abuses, the events of the Arab Spring of 2011 have started a very live revolution in Egypt. We are drafting laws. There is a daily debate about what human rights mean in our everyday lives. But it is and uphold human rights are simply not enough. They are necessary, but they are not sufficient to realizing human rights in our everyday lives, global south. India shows us that good laws are not enough. There is a big gap between the law on the books and the law in it is not enough to have good laws. And very often these notions of freedom and justice and dignity and equality promote ideas how he would not treat her. Because she had HIV, and he assumed that she was a bad woman, that she had been doing things against religion, and that is how she had become infected. A flagrant, dramatic, inconscionable abuse of her rights. There was a film made of this woman's life about 2 years ago. The film is called Asma. It's made by a very talented Egyptian director called Amr Salama. And this is the story of what happened to this woman and her everyday struggle for dignity in a world which rejects her. And I saw this film at one of Cairo's leading medical schools. I was surrounded by hundreds of medical students. And these are the same medical practitioners who in the film are shown rejecting this woman, refusing her treatment. And at one point in the film, the woman Asma, the heroine, says to people around her, "It is not this disease, this AIDS, which I have, which will kill me. It is your disease, which you have, which is stigma and discrimination." And around me, those medical students stood up and they cheered and they applauded. These are young people who had never really thought about HIV. They thought that HIV was someone else's problem. But for one moment in time, this problem became their problem and they realized their responsibility in upholding the essential human rights of their patients and of people who are living with HIV. That is the power of film. Now, whether this translates into their practice as doctors in the years to come is another story. But it is the power of these stories in film, in media, on Facebook, in social media, all are available.
Française, New Marine Lines, in case I don't know if you'll tell that later. This will be the main venue of the festival. So you might be wondering why Alliance Française, which is most or better known maybe to give French classes. We have many venues, many students giving French classes. Why are we involved in this festival? But actually, Alliance Française aim is to promote the exchange between French and India. So it's not only about classes, it's about promoting dialogue, promoting cultural exchange, of course, debate, everything that could be an interaction between both our countries is part of our goal. And we do that obviously through different organizations, and among others, the Flashpoint Festival, which is for us a great mean of opening a debate here. So we are fully into our role and into our aims here to share our experiences also as democracies, and I will just go on about the reflection you were saying, talking about democracy. Indeed, it's very difficult to define what a democracy is as such, concretely, but there's one thing that we have. First, somehow judicial protection, so we can enter into activities knowing that somehow our systems, not perfect, but our systems will allow us to go on and give us some protection in case of trouble. And secondly, and most important for our concerns, we'll be able to open debates about subjects that could improve our well-being and our future, and not our future as French or Indians or Egyptians, but as human beings. And this is a privilege, really, because there are not many countries in the world, believe me, where you can do such activities. And especially because sometimes the activities are disturbing for our own conscience, you know, and also for our governments, you know. So it's a privilege, and we will never repeat enough how lucky we are to be here, for instance, in Mumbai, to be able to have a press conference talking about a festival about human rights in the world. So that's a way that we have both, or I'm both, and all of us actually enter into through the support also of the press, which plays a major part in developing and defending the human rights through all grassroots organizations.
इस फिल्म को इस फेस्टिवल में पेश कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि ये बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट, बहुत ज़रूरी है कि ऐसे फोरम में, ह्यूमन राइट्स फोरम में शाहिद की कहानी लोगों तक पहुँचे और लोगों तक, और उस पर मेरा मानना है कि फिल्म्स के ज़रिए बदलाव नहीं हो सकता, रिफॉर्म, सोशल चेंज या रिफॉर्म फिल्म के ज़रिए नहीं हो सकता, लेकिन फिल्म्स के ज़रिए डिबेट, डिस्कोर्स, आप विचार विमर्श कर सकते हो, आप फिल्म्स को लेकर डिबेट कर सकते हो, जो मुद्दा उठाया है फिल्म में उसके ज़रिए डिबेट कर सकते हो। तो मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि ये डिबेट जारी रहेगी। मेरा था कि शाहिद का कमर्शियल रिलीज़ होना वो सिर्फ ज़रूरी नहीं था, ये ज़रूरी है कि शाहिद की कहानी और दूर तक जाए और लोग देखें, ताकि वो लोग इसके बारे में डिबेट कर सकें। शाहिद क्या है? एक हमारे जैसे आदमी की कहानी है। तो मेरा मानना था कि
Vedi, I would like you to share a little bit about your film and why you made that film.
Sure. To begin with, as Mr. Rangan said, my film is about the East Indian community of Mumbai and their struggles with the forces of development that see their land as prime real estate. Part of the film focuses on the community in mainland Mumbai, places like Bandra, Juhu, Vile Parle, and their stories of loss of this old land livelihood. As well as the second part of the film focuses on the community in Dharavi Island, which is Gorai Malori region, 80% of which are East Indians. And you've been following the newspapers for the last few years. They've struggled against SES, a bridge that was to come up, and lately there's also more stuff happening over there. So the second half of the film focuses on the way, on the movement that this community has amazingly mobilized in the second in Dharavi Island. The crisis at the heart of the film is that a way of life has been lost, the community in mainland Mumbai, and a way of life is about to be lost. And therefore, my focus is to bring this as much to attention as possible, showing it in different spaces, attention from media people, that sort of thing. In terms of why I made this film, as somebody who's been a Bombayite most of my life, the disappearances of spaces and disappearances of communities like the East Indian community from spaces that have been traditionally associated with them, they're a very intrinsic part of the history of Mumbai, is something I've been, it's been on a slow burn process. It's been something I've been noticing all my life. In 2009, I was working on a landed community, researching a landed community film, focusing specifically on Bandra, which is one of the major strongholds of the East Indian community. 2009 was also an important time for the community because Gauthan issues, the land mafia taking, scaring people into giving up their buildings, were being talked about in the newspapers, as well as the Dharavi Island lot of the newspapers as well. So it all sort of came together then, because I increasingly felt that this film could not just be about Bandra, but it had to be about the larger issues that the community was facing, not just in the western suburbs, but as well in Guraiwala region. So that's really why I ended up doing it.
Thank you. The media can do a lot of work. Everybody can pick up now with blog, internet, mobile phones, laptop. Everybody can be a human rights activist by writing about it, by posting photographs, by sharing information. I think all of us can be actually human rights defenders, and all of us can be flashpointers. And I welcome all of you to join the movement by writing about it and sharing and blogging. Thanks so much for coming out. I actually have a small token of appreciation for each of our guests who especially come all the way to be with us. So much Bhatt sir for joining us today and being part of it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Benny. So I wanted just photo op if you can do with all our us holding this. That'd be awesome. I think if we can just do that. चल ठीक है आइए मैम
look everyone. अच्छा यार
पीछे वालों के लिए बैठ जा तुम लोग बैठ जा पीछे वाले रो रहे हैं होल्ड इट अप रेडी हाँ ओके हो गया हो गया हाँ बोलो
so we can sit if there's any questions by the press we can answer it here.
So if you can do one picture without the flashpoint in the background.
भारत की मेन स्ट्रीम फिल्मों में अब तक ये मुताबिक नहीं बन पाया अगर एक साइड को माइनस कर दें
नहीं भारत का सिनेमा हमेशा ह्यूमन राइट्स पे ही फिल्में बनाता रहा है जब भी आपने फिल्में देखी हिंदुस्तान की फिल्म बनी थी मदर इंडिया जो हमने बचपन में देखी थी क्या वो ह्यूमन राइट का प्रॉब्लम नहीं था उसमें कन्हैया लाल जो वहाँ के जो एक मनी लेंडर थे जो अत्याचार करते हैं तो हिंदुस्तानी मेन स्ट्रीम सिनेमा ने हाँ ये और बात है कि आपको उसका अंदाज बयां उससे एतराज है और एक दूसरा सिनेमा है जो रियलिस्टिकली उस ह्यूमन राइट्स को पोर्ट्रे करता है मगर जब मेन स्ट्रीम कहानी जो होती है वो हमेशा एक अत्याचार करने वाले की कहानी होती है और एक जुल्म सहने वाले की कहानी होती है और फिर जुल्म क्या सहने वाला कैसे बगावत करता है ये तो हिंदुस्तानी सिनेमा का हमेशा ही एक रूप रहा है आपको शिकायत हो सकती है कि बहुत ही थिएट्रिकल वे से या बच्चों के स्कूल के प्ले के अंदाज से बातें कही जाती हैं मेन स्ट्रीम में कुछ आज के दौर में सिनेमा का एक रूप बदल रहा है तो कहीं पर कंज्यूमर की जो डिमांड है वो ज़्यादा कहीं सोफिस्टिकेटेड है तो जाहिर है कि आज के दौर के फिल्म मेकर आप पूरी देंगे जिस तरह इन्होंने आपको शायद दी और आप उसकी तारीफ कर रहे हैं मगर सबको शिकायत ये है कि आप लोग देखने नहीं गए थे शायद इसकी तारीफ करने वाले हमको मिल जाते देखने जाते नहीं आप
भट्ट साहब आपको अगर हटा दें इंडस्ट्री में और कुछ ऐसे कलाकार हैं इनको हटा दें लेकिन बॉलीवुड में खुद देखने को मिला है कई बार कि बॉलीवुड की पर्सनालिटीज कभी भी सोशल मुद्दा की जब बात होती है तो